So we're going to, without further ado, we're approaching kind of the, speaking about stages of a rocket, we're approaching the last stage of the rocket. And we're going to have Rolf, once he's geared up, so to say, talking to us. So, I mean, I don't need to present him, but I'm still going to do because he's not yet ready. So Rolf is the CDO of Schwarz, of Schwarz, yes, and the co-CEO of Schwarz Digit. And he's getting ready. So I can see from his looks that he's getting there. And after Rolf, just to preempt what we're going to go afterwards. So afterwards, we're going to have to take all our gears, which are here in the... So the jackets, which people or whatever was down there, we pulled it up. So it's all there in front for everyone, so you don't have to go down anymore. Whoever left things there, we should take them with us afterwards, because then, and we're going to guide you so that no one gets lost. But we're going to go then to the other side of the building, where we're going to have the view also of the Fraunhofer. And there we're going to see how Lola is going to disrupt her industry, which is the opera. Monsieur.
Yeah, I skipped the introduction. This was a good thing about the panel. Before we start, just one thing about this question you got about relevance. This is the whole discussion I have for the next 2 hours. So Michelle told me about talking 2 hours about, half an hour, rethinking the digital world. But what I can tell you is everything I will talk now is, I think if we do not do this, we won't be relevant anymore. And this was a discussion we had at Schwarz over the last 4 or 5 years, because we have seen some changes very early stage. And I want to take a little bit through the journey. And I started this on the panel. When I look today, and I really can tell you, I had the big luck to be born in the 70s. And when I finished my education, it was this year 2000 change. And the year 2000 was, I think, the best thing which could happen to IT, because you can sell on 2 ways, greediness and fear. And the whole IT people who are really bad salesperson, they told all CEOs, if you do not invest money in IT with the year 2000 change, your company will be dead. So there was a ton of money available. We had the internet hype, and 2000 was this globalization discussion. So I had the luck, and this is what I'm saying when I talk about the world. Today I see the world changing in a dramatic way. And as I said, I finished my university degrees. I started working, and we were flying around the world. It was at the time with SAP. I had been all over the place, in the US, in Russia, Latin America. We had been China, and everybody was open. It was, you just needed a passport and some visas and credit cards. And I said this before, this was amazing. And I have now almost 20-year-old boy, and I often tell and say, when we talk, I said, "Oh, Lenny, this is such a bad time you live in right now, because when you become older, everything is bad. Every glass is half empty. And when you were young, everything was better, and you anyhow worked harder, better than the kids of today." And I was trying to explain to him how bad the world is, and he said, "I don't get this, Rolf." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, I think you have the wrong mindset." So I said, "Okay, I have the wrong mindset. Well, help me." And he said, "Look, since I can think," so when he was 10 years old, in Russia was a war because they invaded the Crimea at this time. He said, "Since I can think, it was hard to travel to the Mideast because we had always this, I call it, situation with Israel and Iran." And he always said, and he also said, and we also had the discussion about China, first of all, getting back Hong Kong, all the fights. Now we have the Taiwan discussion. So it's really amazing how the kids of today say it. And he says, "Yeah, and imagine if we can go to Russia for the kids of today. This would be amazing, because right now nobody would go there. Imagine when you look in today's world, how when you look at it, that we have 5, let's say, blocks fighting for their position and getting the interests executed." And what I learned from the discussion with 20-year-old people, we have a too high baseline. We have to lower the baseline to understand what's going on. We have to get a reality view and a reality check how the world looks like. And I want to take you through the reality as I see it today. And so many things changed in the last 3 to 4 years. This is, for example, Russia. And Russia, I'm always saying, changed completely, as I would say, the transatlantic and international rules of behavior. Because what happened in Russia from a cybercrime perspective, the Russians understood our NATO constitution. And they understand the chapter 5. So what they did is they started, I would say, around 2019 to work together with criminals. So the Secret Service and the National Security Agency from Russia, the FSB, started working with criminals for cyber attacks. And they have built a very fantastic, high professional cybercrime economy. And they do this in all different levels. They do this for ransomware attacks. This is mainly to conquer the sanctions. So we believe the sanctions are great. I can tell you, as we rolled out more sanctions, the amount of ransomware attacks went higher. And just to let you know, you all think drugs is a bad business. With the ransomware and cybercrime, more money is made than with drugs. So just to be very clear on a global level. And what they did, they started working in such a professional coalition with criminals that nobody can really say Russia is attacking us. The other thing is they use this for destabilization. This is, of course, why companies like we, or like us, what we do is we feed 1/4 of the German population. So we are a nice target. Because I'm always making this example. You all remember the COVID times when people were having almost fights for toilet paper. It was just toilet paper, okay? And you had enough newspapers you could use, and you have other things you could use to make this business. Imagine if this is food. Imagine after 3 days, there is no more food in the shelves. What then happens in the stores? And with all respect to the competitors of the Schwarz Group in retail business, they don't have the capacity to fulfill 1/4 of the German population and feed them with food. This is a reality. Another area is the espionage. So you have the military perspective of hybrid wars, you have the destabilization for political interests, you have the ransomware for economical perspectives. This is what happened there. This wasn't there 5 years ago. Another area is, of course, China. I said this before. China is also something interesting because China uses the cybercrime very intensive, not so much for ransomware. They understand to make money. In China, it's more about the espionage. There is a very interesting trend we see since 1 or 2 years. It is, I'm saying, harvest and decrypt later. So I can tell you, I assume that in China we have already a quantum computer who can decrypt asynchronous 256-bit RSA keys. This is a business model. I was, the Germans were so proud when they have seen that there was a cyber attack, and they have stolen in the so-called Department for Cartography, so the whole geographic maps of Germany are stolen. But they were so happy that there was no ransomware. And I said, guys, you didn't get it. They didn't want to get money from you today. They wanted to have the data for 1 day after tomorrow. And this is what happens there. You also see the political fight for Taiwan. It's about the silicon. It's about the dependency on chips. I'm not talking about the super high-intense NVIDIA or graphical chips we have for AI. I'm talking of the chips to have your dishwasher working. This kind of stuff. We always think about the high end. Look, if those chips are not available and there is I call it a tariff or whatever, our normal devices don't work. We don't have the industry anymore for this. Where we have a great industry in chips is for special chips, for example, in cars, but not in the, I call it common plastic stuff, which we define as commodity. Of course, there is also another country called the US, and I'm not sure if it's now the US and Greenland or Panama or Gulf of Americas, but it's interesting because the Americas, how would I say this to be politically correct? They have now great leaders with Elon Musk as the brain of Mr. Trump. We fall back 70 years. But in the US, it's one thing which is absolutely valid for decades. And this is now in a stage where it's getting difficult. It is to keep the number one position in the world. And they do everything without any, I call it, compromise. I was always talking about the negative and downside, or negative points and downsides of our Cloud Act 2. I always was saying, guys, don't underestimate what we have done with data stored in the US. I was always preaching this like a prayer. And now the first thing we do, we think about the Cloud Act, and there's one thing you have to keep in mind. The US government prohibits US companies to store their data outside the US. But we do this. Guess why they prohibit this? Because they know what you can do with data stored on US servers. And this is defined by law. And when I saw that now Elon Musk had the great idea to access all financial data for tax purposes, guys, think about the mindset. So in the US, they have only one goal, to be the number one country, and now they have leaders who are very, very, find the right word, narrowed down in their bandwidth of thinking. Let's put it this way. And last but not least, we have a Mideast. Mideast is something which I personally am concerned most. It's not about the conflict of Israel or Palestine or whatever. People don't understand that this is just what I call it a side effect. The Mideast is burning, and it's burning because there's the question which kind of system will conquer the Mideast. You have this system, the traditional one with Qatar and Iran, and you have the more, I would say, UAE style with Israel. It's more the Western or traditional model. And the whole conflicts we have there for years is about who will dominate this. And you've seen Saudis have taken their choice. The Mideast, we were saying the United Arab Emirates have taken a choice. But this is a conflict. And this is just, I call it, a very narrowed down conflict from a global point of view. And this is so important for logistics. If you don't have the Mideast under control for logistics, it has such an impact on everything you trade around the world. And forget the Silk Road when you have to put everything around Africa. And just to let you know, this is a conflict which I would like to get solved. And maybe is Israel the starting point, but it's going much deeper. And don't underestimate when you look, for example, on Turkey, which is a fantastic country, which is the only country in Europe and Asia, and it's a great bridge between those two cultures, and how hard it is for them under this whole discussion to take off the potential they have when I look at the inflation rates and all the stuff. And this is why I'm saying the Mideast is, for me, one of the crucial elements we have to solve for prosperity from a globalization. Without a stable Mideast, there won't be back the globalization we had 20 years ago. And then last but not least, and this is funny, you know, when I ask, I'm always asking for what I want to say, and my team is putting me together pictures, and it's so funny. All the pictures you have seen so far are generated by AI. None of this picture was real. This is the only real picture, so we didn't find an AI pictures about Europe. Maybe we didn't find paper on an AI perspective saying, why do you need paper? But this is a little bit what we do in Europe. I can tell you we have the greatest ideas and the greatest set of values, and I call it from a human perspective, the greatest value set. We have a fantastic union of markets, of people, but at the end of the day, we over-engineer with policies and we overcomplicate. And just to let you know, the last legislation of the European Commission has still 838 laws, which are defined, but not rolled out yet. So you must imagine this is something, I'm saying, in Germany there is this saying, was ist die Steigerung von gut? Gut gemeint. This is, so it means what happens after good, it's not great, it was meant in a good perspective for me. And this is what we have here. But I can tell you, I believe in this. I believe in the AI Act, I believe in the GDPR, because this gives you the biggest bandwidth of variety, diversity, and the potential. And this is something I'm saying made in Europe as an export element, because so many countries, and I come to this in a second, would exactly need what we have here in mind. We just have to put it together. And when you think about this, this is the situation we are today. This is where I'm saying we have high values, and the younger generation says, hey, Rolf, lower your bar of the expectation. What is the story here? And I'm often getting asked, Rolf, why did this happen? Why didn't we see this? And I think it's very simple. I'm not sure why we talk so much about root causes for the current situation. You know what the reason is for this whole situation? Since World War II and the United Nations, we had a so-called rule-based world. We had some global rules about territories, behavior, exchange, trade. And the only thing which happened the last 5, I would say even 10, 15 years, people, individuals, tested if they can break the rules or if something happens. We left this rule-based world. Nothing else. That's everything. So I was really listening and reading so much about this, but the only thing we did is the rules, which had been stable for almost 70 years, are no longer stable. So you cannot rely on the rules. That's everything. And this is the point where people say, Rolf, but it's easy. What we need is we have to be flexible. This is the typical management result when you hire McKinsey for 3 months. You need more flexibility if there are no more rules. And then, if you hire them for another 3 months, they will tell you, you know what you need? Digitalization. Because this gets you flexibility. I can tell you, I'm more a Mark Twain fan who said it's so hard to predict, it's so hard to make predictions, especially when the future is involved. So save the money for McKinsey, read Mark Twain. It's hard to make prediction, especially when the future is involved. And I was thinking about, I'm a digital guy, so this is cool, you can sell digital. But I came to the point to ask myself if this is really true. If digitalization is helping you to conquer in those uncertain times. And I was challenging this all the time, and even if I'm a digital guy, and I came to the point that it's wrong. Because the biggest issue, and I liked the comment before on the panel when we spoke about, hey guys, it's not about sovereignty, it's the bigger things, pollution, what we need with CO2 footprint. And this is what I said, yeah, but before we take the moon shot, we need a roof shot. The problem is, the biggest issue we have with digitalization is dependency. And I can tell you also the cash in the bank is dependency. If your export level is not balanced, it happens to become a dependency. And I can tell you the only way to come back to what we had as luck in the 2000s, a globalization with fair trade, free trade, whatever you have, works if in this uncertain world you are independent. Because there is nothing stronger than the position that you can stand up whenever you are in a negotiation. This is the biggest strength you can have. When you are so independent, you can stand up that it was great talking to you, thank you. Imagine how Habeck, our great Minister of Economies, who crashed the economy in Germany in the hardest way since World War II, how he behaved when he was in Qatar asking for gas. He could not stand up off the table. The funny thing is, I had some friends in the negotiation team, and he was so under pressure and so dependent from this freaking gas that he even forgot to negotiate with an Arab country. We paid a higher price than Italy. I was like, are you kidding me? No, he took the first price to put on the table. They feel insulted. They felt insulted, and this is for me saying, I can give you one advice. Whenever I go in negotiation and I have no way out, I do not go there. And this is the reason why I can tell you, digitalization won't work to conquer those days. What you need is digital sovereignty. And this is the first step, because digital sovereignty means that you, for your core digital processes, which is the backbone of your business, of your company, you are independent and you can take your decisions. It cannot be that you can't do promises to your customers because you do not know if the Americans are changing the GDPR rights or if they misbehave with the Cloud Act 2. You cannot give a customer, when you run on an American hyperscaler, the promise that the data they store based on your terms and conditions are only used for the purpose you decide. You cannot do it. This is the reason we build our own cloud. What you need is digital sovereignty for everything which is important for your company, value and promises to your customers. And when you have this, you know what happens? Then you become independent. And this gives you the freedom of choice. And I tell you one thing, and this gives you the chance in such an uncertain world to go back to the table and negotiate global trade relationships. So where we want to achieve, this is the moonshot. I would like to come back to this. Again, even if our young kids and generations says, I give a shit because we don't have this high baseline. You have lower your baseline. I don't care. If you have independency, you can walk into the Oval Office and talk. You know what? Why should we fear tariffs from the US? We can make an import tariff on digital services. I would love this. It would help our solution portfolio to be sold, but no, I would love this just to tell Trump, there's a mirror in a relationship. You have to balance it, guys. What happens right now is people leverage the dependencies of others to use their power. Look, maybe I'm in the age that I don't want to argue anymore, but the thing is, when people use their power, they left the arguments and the content. And this is where I'm telling you, freedom of choice gives you the chance to come back to where we came from. And it only works when you're independent. And the reason I tell you this is what I see, and this is why I've chosen a map. 2 numbers. When we had this war situation in the Ukraine and then the pipeline manipulation, whoever it was, of Nord Stream, remember the number 55%. 55% of our gas came from Russia. So now you have to understand, you take the industry sector, energy, then we have also coal, oil, other things. There was gas, and 55% of this portion came from Russia. And you all remember what happened in the press. It was unbelievable, I think for 2-3 weeks. And I was figuring out how much percent of our digital technologies come outside Germany. And guess what? 82%. Not only from one element in one sector. 82% of all digital technologies required in Germany are sourced abroad. And now look at this. There's only 2 countries who have not this dependency, who have not the vulnerability. It's China and the US. It's funny. And they stand up now and talk about tariffs. And the US, why did they pull back the chip discussion? Why do we have this fight with Taiwan? But you know how I see this? I see this in a new age of colonization. But the difference is, when you go back 100 or 200 years, and we had this colonial age, we went, for example, to Africa or somewhere else to get the resources like mining, minerals, and so on. Today, I see the colonization of data. The resource is data. Look, everybody knows AI without data is worth nothing. So we always said oil is the gold, or we said data is the oil of the 21st century. I can tell you one thing. Data is what you need for AI. When you have the AI, you have the dependency. Most people love black boxes because then you're completely dependent. Microsoft is doing everything to push you into Copilot. OpenAI is the new gold mine of the world. But what you need is data. And this is what happens right now. And this is why Americans are brutal with hyperscalers. This is why even SAP was having in their terms and conditions from an SAP RISE contract the statement that they are allowed to use your data anonymized to train a not defined AI. So we got this contract. The CEO said, hey, Rolf, you only have to read 43 pages. I said, but if only 43 pages are relevant, why do you send me 538? And we read it because we are retailers. And then in one of the 538 pages, which were not relevant of the 43, was the statement that SAP is allowed to use your data to train AI models. You know, I was like, is this a joke? because we have 7.3 billion customer receipts of our shopping. If you would use this data to train an AI model, you would have the customer segmentation, product segmentation, regional segmentation, you have everything. You have our core business model, how we put products together, what is the typical price mix, everything, even if it was anonymized. So I picked up the phone, called Thomas Saueressig, and said, Thomas, which kind of shit did you smoke this morning? And then he was like, yeah, but it's anonymized. I said, are you kidding me? If I would sign this contract, everything around our core business model could go to Aldi, to Kroger, to Walmart. Are you crazy? And by the way, companies like GfK are done, because then you don't need any market research companies anymore if you have the real data by SAP. And he said, well, we never thought about this. I said, Thomas, maybe that the reason you didn't talk about this is because it was only 43 pages you think were relevant. And then I asked the question, which other customers, whom except me, called you about this? And he said, you're the first one. It was not that SAP put it in, because everybody puts it in. Now they learn from the Americans, so okay, they did something great, but nobody cares. No mid-market company understands this. And think about the 82%. This is where I can tell you what I see since I was at the Schwarz group, where we are preaching independency from day one. When you are critical infrastructure and you have to feed people with water, you cannot be dependent. This is why you make a vertical integration. And now we give everything into digital. You know, I have seen at Coop, one of our competitors, when they had been hacked by some hackers, and they had to close their stores for 1 week in Sweden. This is reality today. And we are still thinking about digital, and we are making acts and contracts which are absolutely fluffy, and we don't get it. And we lose the sensitivity. We think anonymized data is great. No, data has so much semantics we do not see. And when you look at AI, this will all come up. So this is why Schwarz Digits was more or less founded. Because what we had is, we had to serve our customers, Lidl and Kaufland. And what we realized first is, when we stored our customer loyalty data in the cloud, we asked American hyperscalers, I don't mention names, from Redmond, if they can tell us where the data is stored. They couldn't even tell this. So we were breaking the GDPR right in Europe, just by storing it there. They couldn't guarantee us that our customer data remains in the European Union. Then we asked Salesforce if they can guarantee us that the customer loyalty data, for example, customer receipts, are not used to train any AI model. By the way, as we know, they are running on AWS, and we know that they are using all these hyperscaler models, that no parameter leaves the system. They couldn't guarantee this. They also couldn't tell us what the software does. This was, at the end, the reason we had to build our own cloud. And we built the own cloud, and funny enough, we did it for us, and suddenly other companies were picking on and said, hey, we want to have this. The same with cybersecurity. We saw all the cyber issues with Microsoft. We found another solution, another approach. It's called CTEM, the Continuous Threat Exposure Management. And we found this company in Israel. We wanted to become a customer, and then we saw that Amazon wanted to buy them. So as we are a retailer, we bought them. And suddenly, and we still didn't have Schwarz Digits, so we just used this for us. And then other companies asked us if we could serve them, for example, Nasdaq, or also SAP, Commerzbank. So companies understood this makes sense, to have a system which protects you, and not the best of suite based on your hyperscaler. Then we figured out with Aleph Alpha that the large language model, we cannot share our core data on an LLM model, which is public. We need to run this for us. And with Aleph Alpha, we found a domain model which is beating other models. So whatever we do with Aleph Alpha, you take a training set. By the way, it only takes you 1/10 of the resources to train the model, because they have already implemented what DeepSeek is now doing publicly. And the funny thing is, so we used, for example, data from Deutsche Bahn, revision data. We cleansed them, we used our revision data, had the training set, trained the model, and we now do our revision reports, which usually take 3 days, in 3 hours for any kind of language. But you have to understand, we have so much domain knowledge in the industry domains that you have to build so-called domain language models and not the public ones. Then, of course, communication. You all know that WhatsApp is the worst messenger in the world from a privacy perspective, so you share everything, all of your communication. And this is the unstructured communication. This is your network. This is your social network. And so we decided to go on a communication model, which is a messenger as well for team communication, which is 100% secure, where the data is only stored on your device, where we have a StackIt or the cloud underneath. And it's the only NATO confidential messenger which is certified. And you need this because if you have the AI agents in the future who organize your life, where do they get the data from? Today, only Apple or Samsung or Android could do this. So protect your most critical, I call it social network. And last but not least, we found a way with Office, with Google, that we could store all the Office data, even if the Office product or the workspace from Google is an American product. We found a way that we could use our own keys, not the Google shared keys, to protect and encrypt our data, and we use more or less the Google workspace as an Office alternative, like a secure shell. So we have data sovereignty established, and this is the reason why we switch away, or why we do not extend the contract with Microsoft when they came on this hilarious idea to double our costs. We said, you know what, we don't have to double the costs for you. We put them to 0, have fun. We found an alternative, which is sovereign. Microsoft didn't allow this. Google also ships all of your Office data on a StackIt cloud in an open data format in case somebody is having a ship and cuts whatever lines from the US. So this is how we figured out what are the most critical digital processes in the Schwarz group, and we built this portfolio. And this portfolio we have more or less now offered under Schwarz Digits to the market. But it was all about what do you do, what do you need to be still relevant in 10 years if your digital backbone drives in a position of dependency. And now imagine if you have such an ecosystem, how much space you have there for startups. Because the sovereignty we have in Europe is something you can export. And I'm often getting asked why I'm doing this. So first of all, we earn our money with food and milk and eggs and whatever you can buy in our stores. So the Digits division, even if it's in the billions already from the revenue, it is compared to this 150 billion from Lidl, it's nothing. So we do not need this to stretch the P&L. We had to do this because we had to do it for ourselves, and now it's an interesting business model. But at the end of the day, you do this for only one purpose. It's if you want to have your company relevant in 10 years, if you want to have your company relevant in 20 years, if you want to have it relevant for the next generation, and if you care about your employees and their families and your suppliers and their families, and we have 600,000 employees, we have 40,000 suppliers with their families, you can imagine we have 7.2 billion customers per year. This is why we do this. Because we do not like to break our promises. And when somebody signs a promise that we do not share his data with anybody else than ourselves to give him better offers, we will not break this promise. So we do it for our people, we do it for the suppliers, we do it for our customers. And at the end of the day, this is what makes Europe special. And when I talk about this, I can tell you, we spoke about what happens, quantum in 5 years. What we should start today is AI. And this is the only thing I want you to take with you tonight. It's all about being relevant, and it's all about people. And one thing I do not like about the whole AI discussion is the social responsibility. If you want to learn how not to behave in AI, look on how the Americans are doing it. Companies dictate what's good, and they also change their directions, and they don't need a fact checker anymore, and they do not have to protect any minorities because now it's freedom of speech. And they change it like this. This is nothing about responsibility. In China, the state or the government takes the responsibility. If you like this, go there. It's fun. But what I mean is, when you have 5 rules, and this is how we do AI, and this is why the AI Act from the EU is not bad. Maybe we over-engineered it at a certain point. The only thing which is bad is that we are not proud enough to say, if you do not fulfill this, we do not use your software. This is the problem. But I can tell you, when you think about AI, and you understand that behind everything you do with AI is a person, you change your attitude, because then a lot of things you cannot use. If you understand that AI should never be bias relevant, this is what you have to fulfill, because we are not discriminating people. If you understand that every result has to be able to be explained, this is why we invested into Aleph Alpha, because every result, even if you don't like it, can be explained. I do not like black box AI, because you do not know what happens. And when there's a result coming out and it's not what you like, understand why. And you will end up into things that your model isn't complete or the data is bad. I'm always doing this example. You know, sometimes press is having bad articles about Aleph Alpha, and they ask me, do you think you invested wrong? And I said, look, this is the problem with technology. If you feed Aleph Alpha with documents from a lawyer, it's a fantastic AI. But if you're now asking for some lyrics for your mother for birthday, it will be very tough, the lyrics. But if your mother-in-law or your mother works in the court, she would love you. But it's not the problem of Aleph Alpha. It is the problem of the data you put in. And this is why I'm saying, understand what comes out. And this is why it's so important that at the end of the day, whatever you do with AI, at least a human being has to be able to understand it end to end, even if he doesn't understand the mathematics and what they calculate, but understand the result and end to end. And then I can tell you, if you now get it to the European level, start with the minimum principle. Minimum principle applied to privacy and documentation. Everything we discussed is great, but we overstretched the minimum. This is the only thing I can tell you about what happens in the EU. And when you take this together, and this is the short-term, near-term goal, first is you have to become independent and sovereign. Then you can go back and discuss on the table your position on eye level. And at the end of the day, start with AI. Do not criticize it. Start it this way. Make it socially responsible. And when you have done this, I can tell you one thing, then you're ready for what's coming in 5 years, which will be quantum computing, because this is the foundation for it. With this, I would like to thank you. I would like that you can rethink digital and enjoy, I think, the finishing speeches, drinks, or the experience you will have. I don't want to spoil. And thank you for your attention. Have a great day.